Welcome to Math 123, Lesson 1. In this lesson, I'm going to define quantitative reasoning for you and give you some insight into the type of reasoning skills that we're going to develop during this semester. Communicating effectively with numbers. It's a really good, concise way to look at quantitative reasoning. This is right from your book and the ebook, but I'm going to read the first sentence because I think it's important. The purpose of this course is to give you the skills needed to make informed decisions when confronted with quantitative information in your personal, public, and professional lives. Okay, here's question 1. It says, on the graph, use the statistics for 1968, those three numbers, in sentences. Well, let's just see what we have here first. On the x-axis down here, we have the years starting in 1968. And over here, we have the mortality rate per 100,000 people. And this little bar, this is women. See down here, that's females. This is both males and females, everybody, and this is males. So we can see in right here, 1968, 1,118.5 males died for every 100,000 males in the population. Now that's a sentence. I want to write that down. That was pretty good. And for this one here, that's everybody. So out of 100,000 in the population, for every 100,000 in the population, 967.3 people died in the year 1968. And for the third one, here's the third sentence. This is for women. In 1968, 823.7 women died for every 100,000 women in the population. And I'll write those down. So there are the sentences using those three different numbers. And they're down there in red. But they don't have to be exactly like that. But you want to convey the information that you were given effectively, and that's a reasonably effective way of communicating. But let's take a deeper look at this graph. Let's take a little deeper dive into that article, into that graph that we just went over. And that graph is from the article, How Americans Die. And there's the graph that we just looked at and found three sentences for, and we had those numbers there, the year 1968, match up to our numbers. Now, this can tell you a lot looking at a graph like this. For instance, why were men dying at such a higher rate than women from 1968 all the way to around 1995? Well, up here, there's probably three good reasons. One, men worked in more dangerous jobs, and they were dangerous. Two, men smoked more than women, by a lot. And three, the Vietnam War was going on. Now, all the rates started dropping until here, where the actual mortality rates rose for both men and for women. The numbers go up, that meant 976.5 per 100,000 men died. And down here, that would be 775 or 785 women per every 100,000 women died, 785 deaths. What happened in the early 80s that would make you suspicious of why that might have occurred? Well, if you guessed the AIDS crisis, then you were probably correct. That's when the AIDS was rampant in the country. Now, healthcare has really improved in the last 20, 25 years, but yet the death rates have kind of leveled off. They haven't really decreased. The mortality rate per 100,000 hasn't really decreased much. Now, why do you think that is? Well, let's go to the next slide. And this explains it. The bottom line, the lighter blue here, the grayish blue, is people over 75, and they've been increasing. They were 3.75% of the population in 1970, and they're 6% of the population in 2010. And it's the same for the 66 to 74 and the 55 to 64 age groups. So that back here, in total, it was about 20% of the population was over 55 or over. And by 2010, we have 25% of the population. And the biggest increases are in people that are over 75. And so you would expect that the death rate would level out because the population, the demographic population of the United States is getting older. So they're saying that the overall rate, which is this one, because it's overall men and women, fell by about 17% from 1968 to 2010, or from 967.3, which would be there, to 799.5, which is there. So they want us to verify this and quantify the change for the rates for men and women in similar fashion. So I'm going to put the numbers up and go through it for you. So I verified the total that they gave us from the last page. They said it was about 17%, and indeed it is about 17%. So how did I do that? Well, basically I'm ignoring the per 100,000 because it's all the same. So it won't affect the actual percentage decrease. So a percentage decrease is the change, which for men, the change would be, it went from 118.5, and the change means subtract, that's 1118.5. Whoops. Minus 812. Divided by the original, which is 1118.5. And then multiply by 100 to make it a percentage. And when you put that in your calculator, you should get 27.4%. For women, I'll let you follow the logic here and see if you can match the answer, which is 4.8%. So you can actually see if you can follow the logic. This is a percent change.